Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers. How you doing today? Today, I want to talk to you about the overall theme is really the ways that we make ourselves smaller, the ways that we contract ourselves so that other people feel comfortable. And the first thing I want to talk about is the use of swearing, but then I'm going to go into some other examples. I was recently, I just feel like I always stumble over my words. In a Facebook group that I'm in for moms that are over a certain age, somebody had posted a question about, do you swear or not? Quite a number of the women in this group said that they don't, and a couple of us said that we did. I'm just stumbling. This really struck a chord in me, and I think that what it struck for me was that whole sense of it's not okay to be authentic, don't be who you are, don't make other people feel uncomfortable. A lot of it is about the patriarchy. Be a nice lady, say nice things, smile, be polite. And I have such strong feelings, especially I'm 58 years old. I've earned a right to say exactly what is on my mind and to be genuine and authentic. Obviously, if you choose not to swear, it's fine. I don't want to make this about swearing, but what this activated for me is that sense of it makes other people feel uncomfortable, and I'm not doing anything that hurts anybody, and it's how I express myself. And it made me start thinking about the ways I think as HSPs that we've gotten messages about being too much, being too sensitive, too intense, too dramatic, making a big deal out of things, all the ways that we are too, and how we've learned to compress ourselves and to make ourselves into what people around us may have told us they expect from us. Along with this comes people pleasing, not wanting to make other people feel uncomfortable, having a difficult time setting boundaries. You know, a lot of this is about wounding and messages that we got from childhood. There's an overlap between the trait of being highly sensitive and wounding. And obviously, I was thinking the other day, I'm sure y'all know that I'm pretty wounded. And I'm very candid about telling you about the things that I struggle with. But most of my stories are about the healing that I'm doing about the wounding. If I didn't have wounding, I don't think I'd have a very interesting podcast for you. We could call it Sunshine and Roses, and there wouldn't be very much content. And I'm sure that y'all know that my lens is coming from a wounded healer. But how many of us have gotten that message that how we show up in the world and who we are is too much for other people? And if we struggle with that wound of too much, we also have the wound of not enough. And I have both of those, that I don't have anything to say. Nobody's going to want to listen. It's not that important. And that feeling of being too much. My needs are too much. My wants are too much. My feelings are too much. I get overwhelmed. The way that we learn to manage this is learning to embrace all parts of who we are. But some other ways that, so I'm trying to think, do I want to talk more about the swearing or not? I have a lot to say about it. And any of you that work with me, I tell you right off the bat that I swear like a sailor. I don't swear on this podcast, but I swear like a sailor. And so if that's a deal breaker, you probably don't want to work with me. You probably don't want to take any of my groups. And I feel like I'm the most authentic and real when I swear. Why is it that that's not okay? Why is that unladylike? And why do we feel like, I don't know, it's a poor reflection on who we are? And they've done studies. They say people who swear are more trustworthy. I think that we're more authentic. And like I said, if you don't swear for whatever reasons, I'm not trying to make a case about why you should swear, but this just really activated something for me. And there's a lot that has to do with feminism, and I'm definitely a feminist. And how come if a woman swears, since she's seen in a negative light, but we don't have a problem with men swearing? I mean, there's so much about the patriarchy that just sets me off and gets me going. And as a result of this article, I started to write a response in this Facebook group and wrote a pretty lengthy response and hit something and the whole thing disappeared. But in the meantime, I had Googled women and swearing and just saw some amazing research about all of this. So if you're interested, you can do a search and see what they come up with. Let's talk about some of the other ways that we may make ourselves small. Part of it is just not showing up authentically, not saying how we feel about things. If people say, "Where do you want to go to eat?" and we don't want to make waves, it's really interesting. And I've noticed with my gremlins are just going off like crazy today. I've told you about kayaking with this gentleman who is teaching me all kinds of amazing stuff. It's so funny. Sometimes I tell you his name, sometimes I don't. I don't, I don't know why I do that. I've noticed that on one hand, it's been really nice to be the learner. I tend to be in charge of most of the things that I do. As you know, I run the online HSP course. I have a therapy practice. I'm very much a take charge type of person. It's just how I'm wired, and I'm good at it. It is really nice to be in environments where I don't have to be the boss. I don't have to be in charge. I don't have to hold the conversation. And there's a part of me that is really enjoying that. But I left the other day thinking, I'm not showing up authentically. And this guy doesn't really know all the things that I have to offer. And am I doing it because it's kind of nice to be in the student role and not have to be in charge? Or is there a part of who I am that I'm just kind of hiding? I don't have an answer for you. And it's not something that I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about. But I did have this thought of, he really doesn't know much about me or who I am, and I'm happy to just show up and be a student. What are some of the other ways that we make ourselves small? Sometimes it can be not sharing our successes because we don't want other people to feel jealous or envious or get mad at us or feel bad about us. I don't really like using labels like codependency, but we often choose to withhold information because we want to control how the other person feels. We don't want other people to get angry or hurt or disappointed. Sometimes even things like feeling good. If we know that someone's suffering, we don't share that we're doing okay because we don't want them to feel bad. And these are not hard and fast rules. And there are times when it is appropriate to tamp things down, or if somebody's really struggling, that it may not be appropriate to talk about all the things that are going well in our lives. But let's just assume, for the sake of conversation, that there are no extenuating circumstances, and we're just looking at the ways that we make ourselves small. Other ways are not talking about money. In our society, we have taboos about talking about how much we spend on things, how much we earn, what salaries are. And in the same way that we want emotional literacy, we want to have financial literacy. Do we talk about money with everybody? No. But it's interesting, even among my colleagues, some of my friends were very open with each other about what our goals are, what we're earning, what we're charging, what we're spending on things. And other people are just, it's a very private thing. I just don't have that. I want to have financial literacy, and the way to do that is to talk about it. But we also may not want to make people feel bad. Again, we don't want to make them feel jealous. Maybe they're going to want stuff from us. The same thing can come up for us in relationships, with jobs, with parenting. We either don't share the things that we're struggling with, or we don't share the successes. And again, it's out of this sense of we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. And so we compress ourselves into polite, kind, non-confrontational. I kind of want to say like boring white bread. I don't think that's racist. And that's using some harsh language. But I think sometimes when we get into this place of not wanting to make waves, we lose like the big, juicy, exciting, fun, making waves type. I don't know what the word is. We can lose that bright colorfulness of our personality because we're trying to figure out what is tolerable, what is acceptable. Chances are, if we do that, we had to do it for survival growing up. And we may have recreated relationships where we need to continue to do that, or the world has changed and we don't know it. And we're so accustomed to trying to read the room and figure out what is acceptable and to stay within that margin of what we think everybody else can accept and tolerate, as opposed to showing up and being delightful, colorful, fruity, emotional, whatever those things are. And I'm not talking about doing things that are outrageous and going outside of your comfort zone, but are there times when you're having thoughts and feelings and ideas about things, but you don't share them because of your concern of what are people going to say? Are they going to judge you? Are they not going to accept you? Are they going to have some kind of feelings? If that's working for you, then you can turn off this episode right now, and I've got nothing else that's going to be very helpful for you. But if you are aware of these things, then when we've got this wounding, childhood emotional neglect, trauma, CPTSD, we have learned to be so in tune with everybody else in the environment and what everybody else needs. Combine that with our HSP traits of depth of processing and being very in tune with what's going on in the environment and being very perceptive. We're very, very good at this. And when it is not coming from a place of wounding, we're great at communicating, at smoothing things over, about problem solving, about getting relationships going. These are strengths. And I'm not saying it's an either or, but when we're coming from a place of wounding, we lose our sense of self. And the goal is to really learn to turn inward and to figure out, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I needing? And what is it that I want to express? And if I'm not able to express that, what is keeping me from doing that? What is the story that I'm making up in my head? If I tell my truth, am I afraid that people are going to get angry or frustrated or disappointed or jealous or mad or want things from me? I don't know what your history is and what things would come up for you, but these are all things that you can ask yourself when you're in a situation and you feel like you're not showing up authentically. Or here's what often happens for me. I'll be in a situation and I leave and I go and I tell somebody about it. And then either they'll ask, well, what did you want to say? Or I'll say, well, here's what I wanted to say. Obviously, what goes on in our head is not always the appropriate thing to say. But often we say nothing and we have this extreme response that we would want to say. And maybe the truth of what would be kind and honest to say is somewhere in the middle. But I really think that this whole concern about being too much, and our society has a thing about being too much. And I'm trying to decide if I want to share this or not. I went to an event and there was a new person who showed up. There's usually the same group of people that show up, and somebody showed up who hadn't been there before. For me, this person was too much. And as Susan Craker will say, often people, when she hears that phrase of, you're too much, she will respond with, well, maybe you're not enough. And she and I have talked about this a little bit. What I did notice was different about this person was it felt like all the attention needed to be focused on this person. And there's a difference between coming into a group and sharing what you have to share, but it felt like everything was about pulling the energy towards this person. And this person made a comment about, if you lived in the place that I live, everybody knows who I am. And I personally found it exhausting to be around this person, only because it didn't feel like there was a lot of reciprocity. Tell me about you. What are you interested in? What do you do? How can we come up with things that are going to work for everybody? It felt like this was the so-and-so show. And I think that many of us have received that message that we're self-centered, we draw too much attention to ourselves. And so we feel like we're that person that I just described. But that person that I just described is really not typically what I see, and it's not how we show up. But I think we have a very difficult time understanding we have an internal perception of ourselves, and it's often incredibly distorted. I mean, how many of you have been told by people like, you seem so calm, you seem like you manage yourself really well, and internally we've got this firestorm going on that people don't see, but we've lived with this depth of processing, maybe some anxiety, maybe some catastrophic thinking. We've learned to navigate our internal world, but it can be very, very different to what people perceive in the external world. And it's so important for us to do our work around this, because many of us have gotten messages. I mean, I can remember being a little kid, Mom, if you're listening, it's all good. But laying on the couch, and I think my mom was cleaning, and she said something like, who do you think you are, a royal princess? And that idea that we have to be busy and it's not okay to rest. And, she was a single parent, so I totally get it. And I'm not always the kindest with my words, but what may have been more helpful would have been, I feel like I'm doing all the work and I would like some help. Can you please help me? But what happens is we internalize those things. And so how many of you, either if you're the one who's cleaning or hustling and somebody else is sitting around, you get resentful, or if somebody else is cleaning or doing things and you're not, you feel guilty, like you should be participating the way they are. There's no right or wrong. It's really just about communicating and our histories and what we bring to situations. But sometimes those minor comments from when we were very young really stick with us. Another one that sticks in my mind, again, Mom, it's all good. I can remember being very, very young and standing on a step stool at the sink doing dishes. And I finished all of the dishes and I was so proud of myself. And I told my mom, and her response was, did you wipe down the counters and look at the water that's behind the faucet? And I remember just feeling devastated. I was so proud at what I had done. And then this comment from my mom, which I'm sure she did not intend to mean to be harmful, but it stuck with me to this day. And it's kind of funny because in my, I'm not a great housekeeper, and my husband really keeps the house in order, and he does the dishes every night. And he just generally, I'm kind of a little mini hoarder. I've got piles of my stuff. The house isn't terrible, but I have energy around this. So he manages things. But when we have company and I get in there to clean, then I get kind of pissy because I'm like, well, you don't clean out the little ledges in the kitchen, and do you clean back here? And that's where I get very detail oriented. And then I get pissy about it internally. I don't say anything to him. So if you listen, my husband, no need to share this with him because he's a wonderful man. And if this is the worst of the things that I have to complain about, I'm doing pretty well. But again, our attention to detail can kind of send us over the edge. And often many of us have issues with control, wanting to be in control, wanting things to be done our way, having standards that are unusually high that other people don't meet. So these are all things for us to really be aware of. And so how does this go back to what we talked about making ourselves small? So we can either make ourselves big where we're totally right and everybody should conform to our standards, or it could be we're not enough, we're not doing enough. And if we have the wound of too much, we will also have the wound of not enough. They say that we're something to the effect of the 5 people that we spend the most time with are the people that we're similar to them. I know I said that in kind of a clunky way, but think about the 5 people that you hang out with, and are you all kind of in the same, same value system, same economic system? And I think that there's some truth to it. And do we end up playing small because we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable? I've told you I've really lost a number of long-term relationships in the last few years. I really do believe that as I became to grow into myself, to know what my truth was, to speak my truth, my relationships couldn't tolerate it. And there were certain things in relationships that didn't work for me, that I need to say what is true for me. And not everybody wants to hear that. And I'm not saying it's my job to say, you need to, you need to, you need to. That is not what telling my truth means. For me, telling my truth means talking about what goes on for me and what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm needing. I'd like to believe that I'm very polite and kind and respectful. But if you have long-term relationships that have been going along a certain way, and all of a sudden one of the people starts to change, that's going to cause a shift in the system. And sometimes the system can flex and bend with it. It can make the relationship even stronger. And sometimes the relationship can't survive that. And I have some sadness about this. And the quality of the relationships that I have with the people that I have friendships with these days are so much stronger and can manage so much more than these other relationships can. And I've talked to you about this before, that when we have new relationships, and we have a little bit of bump or conflict come up, it's really a great opportunity to test what can the relationship handle. And if it can't, then it gives you really good information that we often have a honeymoon period in friendships, work relationships, personal relationships, where everything is kind of fine. I know for me that I can be very, very flexible in the very beginning of a relationship. The novelty is new. I don't mind it. But after a while, I kind of want to go back to the things that I like and what's comfortable. And often in relationships, we are much more, it's kind of like what I started out telling you with this person that I paddle with. I'm kind of the learner and I don't insert myself a lot into things, and I'm flexible and easygoing. But over time, my preferences and my needs will need to come out even more. And it's not uncommon that we do this in the beginning of a relationship. And then we hit a point where we need to show up more authentically, and it's a chance to see what the relationship can tolerate. I was recently talking with somebody. We have a long-term relationship, and this bump came up, and one of the people in the relationship I'm very close to, and he was talking about, this bump, and was feeling concerned and didn't want to bring this up and didn't want to hurt the other person's feelings. And my comment to him was, you two have been friends long enough, and I think that you can tolerate the discomfort, and it's okay for you to have competing needs, and it's okay for you to do what you need to do. And if it makes him uncomfortable, it's really okay. I know I'm not giving you specifics because it wouldn't be appropriate. I'm not talking about doing things that are blatantly going to make somebody very uncomfortable. But my friend tends to sacrifice his needs because he doesn't want to make waves. It's just what he had to do to survive, but he doesn't see it that way. He sees himself as being very easygoing, but he sacrifices. And I don't think he has to do that in this relationship. And they had a couple of talks, and my friend asserted himself. And really, I think that there was more closeness in the relationship and more intimacy because both of these men were willing to be kind of brave and talk about things that oftentimes men will not talk about. So, what I would invite you to do is to just use some mindfulness in your relationships. Notice if you're having that little thought bubble that, like, I'd really like to say something, or that person's annoying me, or I'm not sharing something because I don't want someone to get mad, or I don't want them to get jealous or get their feelings hurt. And is that working for you? And if it's working for you and you feel like you've got the depth and the intimacy and the closeness in your relationships and you're feeling satisfied, no need to do anything. But if you're having the sense that you're not having the closeness in relationships, or you feel like it's not okay for you to shine, it's not okay for you to share your dreams, talk about the things that are really important to you, that nobody supports you, you might want to take a look at that. So the first thing is to identify, what are you thinking, feeling, wanting, needing, dreaming about? Are there people that you can share those things with that support you fully? And if not, what are the things that come up, either that you don't share those things with those people, or that people share their concerns in air quotes with you and they talk you out of what it is that you want? Just using mindfulness to start bringing awareness to, are you being fully supported in your relationships? And are you able to identify and express what it is that you want? Are you making yourself small? And there are lots of ways that we all do this. It's interesting. My son came to town last night and I noticed myself doing this. And I've talked to you about this before, that my husband and son like to watch things on TV that are not what I normally like to watch. And I've not really been into TV recently. So it's not like my husband and I have a show that is our go-to in the evening. But when my son got here and we had dinner, I was feeling kind of tired, and I just felt like I knew that if I wasn't in the living room, that they would watch something that they would really enjoy. And I haven't been that much into TV. And I decided to go into the other room and get on TikTok, dorsal TikTok. And I was okay with it. But I was aware that part of it is like, I wanted them to have what they wanted, and I didn't want my needs to interfere, to conflict with what was going on with them. It's not that we get enlightenment, we heal, and then we never struggle with this stuff. This stuff is going to constantly be coming up for us, but in smaller doses, in different ways, and we can learn to heal from it. Where are you playing small? What are your dreams? What are you wanting? Where do you make yourself less than because you don't want to upset other people or make them feel uncomfortable? Yeah, you know that feeling that you're getting right now? That's what I'm talking about. That is from wounding, CPTSD, childhood emotional neglect. That is not about what's going on today, because as adults can handle our feelings and conflict and uncomfortable things. And if you're feeling afraid that people can't manage your feelings, either you've attracted other wounded people into your life, or you've got some more work to do around your healing and your wounding. We all do. There is no end point to it. Deep breath. If you're needing any support around any of this, I do have a couple spots open. You can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. If you're interested in the online HSP course, I will be starting that in January. I will probably only be running it maybe once or twice a year now. I'm not positive. I know I said I was going to be doing it 4 times a year. Right now, I'm thinking probably once or twice a year. I will have more information coming soon. Registration will open mid-December and will end just before the end of December. So stay tuned for that. I also want to thank Shelly Aaron at Shelly Aaron Productions, who will be starting to do my editing again. She will be editing this episode. So if it sounds beautiful to you, that's because of my editor. I hope you are doing well. If there's anything I can do for you, you can always shoot me an email at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.